I'm going to show you an interesting way to visualize, revisualize your box patterns. If you've been struggling with your box patterns, then part of the reason is because of the way the human brain actually likes to digest information. The brain likes to digest it in small chunks. And if you think about it, when you play a box pattern, I'll just drop this down here a little bit here. When you play a box pattern going across the strings like this, 6 strings, 2 notes on each string. There's a lot of notes going on there. There's a lot of things going on there. And the thing is, what we always want to do is want to find this way of chunking the information and bringing it down, making it smaller. So in this lesson, I have a student cancel and not turn up. So I thought, well, why not just jump on YouTube and teaching here live now? And I just thought, well, you know, let's do this pentatonic thing, because what I want to do is I want to show you a way of breaking down the pentatonic and chunking it in a different way. You might not have seen this approach. Hopefully it's a new approach to you, but it's very, very visual. Because the guitar is all about shapes and patterns. If you haven't checked out my video on the elevator triangles, that's one that really, really taps into this idea of shapes. Hopefully, the video on this looks like it's back to front. The text, all the text is the wrong way around. Hopefully this will render and flip itself around again. If it doesn't, then I'll probably delete this. So make sure you watch this now. Watch it while you can. But I will redo it again if that is the case, because, you know, Apple, they don't make it easy for us. So, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the guitar down. I'm going to take the camera over here to some paper so I can show you some diagrams of how we basically implement this pentatonic box. And when I mean the pentatonic box, I'll just demonstrate. There are 5 pentatonic boxes, and the first one is the one that we all know and love, which goes 5-8 on the E string, 5-7 on the A string, 5-7 on the D string, 5-7 on the G string, 5-8 on the B string, 5-8 on the thin E string. Now the second pattern interconnects with that. I'm going to talk more about that. So then I go 8-10, then I go on the E string, then I go 7-10 on the A string, I go 7-10 on the D string, then I go 7-9 on the this is just far too long. Do you see how laborious this is? Let me show you this other way of doing it, and then hopefully you'll be able to see how these scales, these 5 box patterns, all interconnect with each other, because me going through it that way, it's a nonsense. And that's the way that it's usually taught. You just go, yeah. So let's not do that, shall we? Should we just book convention? Because convention isn't always a good thing. So let me take you over here, like I say, to my diagram. What I'm going to do is get my colored pens, because like I say, color is useful for a visual tool. So I'll take you over here, and I'm going to reposition you over here, guys. So these are, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at this sheet just here. It isn't pretty. This isn't pretty, but by any means. But if I can talk you through this, right? It's not fancy graphics, you know, because that takes time, and me doing all that stuff. I mean, you know, it would be nice if I did, but for now, let's just get down and dirty with a pen and some paper, because you can't beat a pen and some paper sometimes. So what this is your basic minor pentatonic. So this is your minor pentatonic. So this is, I put that there. Now, because I put this at the 5th position, what ends up happening is this would be my root note. So if I put a circle around that, that tells me that's the root note. So this whole thing is movable. So if I move this whole pattern, say, up to the 12th fret, that would mean it would be the minor that is related to that root note. So that would be E minor pentatonic. And this whole thing shifts. And I want you to see how this works. This also works with the caged system. If you haven't seen my videos on the caged system, watch on the caged octaves. That's super important because this shows you how these notes are distributed. The root note is the home note. When you play your phrases and your solos, when you play the root note, your phrase is finished. Your licks are finished. You know, you've got to, that's when you've got to start a new one. So you need to know where the root is. And this is why the caged octaves are super, super important to learn. So if you look here, because this one starts on the E string and jumps over here, this is the E-shaped octave. Because I can find an E minor chord, an E minor shaped chord in there, then this by default is going to be my E minor. Sorry, this is going to be my root note. So so we've got the root, and the root. So you can see there's three positions where we can resolve any licks that we have by playing those notes there. Now, the thing that I want you to understand with this, because these are 2 notes per string scales, then essentially it becomes easier to visualize these as almost like Tetris or Lego blocks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this chunk of information here and we're going to drop it down into my next box here. Hopefully you can see that. What it means is I'm getting rid of these ones here and I'm just going to transfer that information there down here. And you can see, because that's the same, the root note's going to shift over into the same position there. So this here, I've moved it down here. Now, I know the box patterns. I'm just going to draw them out because the thing is, I'm going to show you a little tip that's going to make it absolutely easier for you to visualize these. So if I just draw the next bunch of dots in, you're going to be able to see that this is the next pattern. This is at the 5th, the 8th fret. This is the 8th to the 10th fret. So this is box 1. And this is box 2. I will take this very self-same document and I will upload it as a PDF after this broadcast. So here you can see we've got the this note here with the root note on it. And because it's on the D string, that's telling me that it's a D-shaped octave. So I'll just replicate that root note there because I need to know where my root note is at all times, because if I don't want to end my phrase and I hit the root note, I'm ending my phrase. So you've got to know where all these notes are because that tells you relatively where other notes are as well. So like I did before here, where I took this off and I placed this down here, I'm going to do exactly the same thing here, but with the next box down, because I want you to see how these bad boys join up. So I'm taking exactly the same pattern and you can see how they connect with each other. The back end of that is the intersection of the box 2. The back end of box 2 is an intersection with box 3. So this is box 3. So on the next pattern, I'm just going to fill these in here. You can see there what I've done is I've filled those in there. Now, because this is an E-shaped octave, this is a D-shaped octave. If we think of the word caged, because that's the beauty of the word caged, it is the shapes, a C shape, an A shape, a G shape, an E shape, and a D shape. Yeah. What we've got is we've got an E shape, we've got a D shape, and what happens is we go back to that sequence again. So after E and D, we go back to C, because we're just spelling out caged to find these octaves, just so that we know exactly where we are. So that gives us the next box, 10 to 12 there, right? So we've got this one here. We're deciphering these pentatonic boxes. I mean, this is a pretty cool way of looking at it as it is, but I'm not done. There's a kicker. Watch this. So what I do is I take this, the front note off here. I'm going to take this intersection here. I'm going to repeat this here at the 12th fret. And you can see this at the 12th fret here. I've got a mic stand in the way there. At the 12th fret, and I outlined that there. You see, it's just easy as just copying that over there. And what we're going to do is we're going to put these other notes in here. Because this is the C shape, the shape that comes after in the sequence of the word of the letters K in the word caged, it's a C shape, then an A shape. So basically replicate that shape over there. So I've gone from the E, I've gone through, that's off the screen there. So you can see I've gone from E to D to C to A. So the cage system is linked, it's embedded into your pentatonics. It's really important that you get that, guys. So do the same thing here, and I love this scale because it's extreme. It's very symmetrical, and to me, kind of, if you look at it sideways, it looks like a set of wardrobe doors. I don't know. Don't ask me why, but it does. It reminds me of a set of wardrobe doors. Now the thing is, because we've got box 4 here, and that's at the 12th to the 15th, right? Which we can also, because the 12th fret is the same as the 0 fret, we can replicate all this down here, but we have to be careful with this note here. There is no note at the 12th fret there. There is a note at the 13th fret on the B string. So we have to make sure that we transfer that over. This is just so that you've got it in all positions. So all these are your open strings, yeah, with that one as your root, the one that looks like a fried egg there. This, 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 and this, and then we'll circle this one here. So you can see that takes us, so we have it from this position. What I can do is I can show you how this, then I knock those off there, replicate this pattern here. It's extremely visual. So I've just replicated that pattern there, and then what I do is I'm back to the beginning. So I have to take that. Let me just make sure that's there, guys. So I have to take this row at the 5th fret. This is the only position where all 6 strings have a note held on the same fret all the way across. Yeah, so that's kind of like ground zero for me. So if I take that and put that and transfer that information here, back down here, then you can see I've come all the way back on myself. Hopefully you can see how that's working there, guys. And also what I'll do is I'll finish it up here. So if I pull this over here and pull this down here, you can see I get exactly the same pattern, because if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that essentially everything from the 12th fret up is just a repeat of the first 12 frets. So that's the 15th and the 17th fret. Now that gives me box 5. Now those are the boxes everybody's got to learn, really, if you want to kind of know those boxes. It's not the only way to learn your pentatonics. There are other ways to learn your pentatonics, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something else, and I'm going to use color, because color is really, really important to help to define this. Now, when you think about pentatonic, penta means 5, and you can see that if I start here at the 5th fret, this is my root note, this is the flat 3rd, this is the 4th, this is the 5th, this is the flat 7th, and then we get back to the root note again. That happens to be an A, a C, a G, right? Sorry, an A, a C, a D, an E, and a G. Yeah, so what happens is that just all repeats again. And these 5 boxes only consist of those notes. Yeah, so, but those notes are everywhere. Now, because it consists of those notes, patterns happen. And the pentatonic actually only really exists. Now, this is quite a freaky concept, but it only exists on 5 strings. One of the strings is a replicated version of it. I call it the wraparound, and it's a repeated string. As you know, your E string and your E string, anything that you play on this E string is going to be replicated on this E string. So this is what I mean by calling it the wraparound. And that's going to make sense when I show you how I fill these out. So we're looking for 2 shapes, and these 2 blocks we're going to have is this shape here. We have a row of 3. Now, depending on how you want to look at it, this is either a tone or a step or it's a major second, whatever interval you want to, however you want to think of it, you can see that that distance there of including this note is 1, 2, 3 frets. You can see that that pattern happens there. There is always going to be this group of 3. You're always going to have this group of 3. And notice where the root note is, because that's going to give you a strong reference point to where you are. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the next pattern. And this is more color, so I'm going to put this in blue. And what this does is this gives me a 4 fret pattern. You can see, including this note, it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4. But with this, we only get 2 strings. So it's a bigger pattern. And look at where the root note is. It's on this, as you're looking at it, the top left corner. This is really, really important, because what I've done here, these 2 shapes here are the pentatonic. These are the 5 strings that I was talking about. Now you can see on the thick E string here, we get what I call the wraparound and a replicated string, because whatever happens on this E string here is going to happen on this E string here. So if I just draw that in, yeah, that's a mirror of that string there. It's just, like I say, it's what I call the wraparound. Right, so if there's any questions, guys, you know, that I can see the chat, I will answer the questions. Right, so let's have a look at this, just so I'm not going blazing ahead. Right, so box 2. Let's look at box 2. Now, I've told you that there are these 2 patterns here. Well, let's look. We can figure out a little bit, if we know where that root note is there, in that group of 3 steps, or if you want to, I'll call them tones, because it goes a semitone and a tone. Those 3 tones, if I replicate that, I can put that across here. Now you might say, but that doesn't look the same, Ricky, because look, that string, it goes off like this. Well, that's down to the discrepancy in the interval between the G and the B string. Yeah, the G and the B string tune differently to all the other strings. If you tune the traditional way, you'll know this. That distance between the G and the B string is 1/3. Yeah, so basically everything moves up 1 fret and is compensated. So this explains why this shape happens. Everything goes up 1 fret, it kinks. If it didn't, however, you would see that this 3 string shape is repeated the same as this one here. I can look at this here, right, and what I can do, let me get my other color. I'm going to get back to this blue one here, and hopefully, guys, you start to see a pattern happening. Here I get my 4 fret pattern in this blue one here. You see 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is a replication of this pattern here. Notice where the root note is. It's in exactly the same place. So essentially, if you learn these 2 patterns and you know where the wraparound and the replication happens, you've got it. So this here string is just a repeat of this string. So just going to bang that color in there. So hopefully you can see how that works there. Right, so moving on. Let's see, we've got box 3 there. Moving on, going to do box 3. Well, you know what? I've started with this color, and I'm going to keep on going with this color. This is a beautiful one to see, is this, because the thing is, it's very, very similar to this pattern. You know, it's very, very similar. They're the same notes. The difference is that because of the thickness of the strings on the E, A, and D string, you're going to get a different timbre. Yeah, a different timbre with those notes there are going to sound a little bit darker, a bit more woody, whereas these might sound a bit brighter. And these are definitely going to sound bright because they're on thinner strings. So just leave that there. Now, remember here, if I put that shape back in there, it crosses the G and the B string, and you can see that kink in that tuning playing out there. It's a bit of a bugger, but you know something, I think it makes shapes a lot more interesting. Some people like to tune that out, you know, by tuning in perfect fourths all the way across, but I think it makes everything a little bit easier. I'm filling this string in because that's my wraparound now. It's flipped over to the other to the other E string, from the thick E string to the thin E string there. Hopefully that makes sense so far. So you can see there's only two patterns here and the wraparound. Now coming back down here, what I want you to look at with the box 4. Box 4, start with this color again. Let's look for that. This is a kind of a pinky peachy color. This orange 3-string pattern. Notice how we have to compensate for that kink in the tuning. It knocks that whole pattern up 1 fret, right? And then look, here's the blue pattern. There's the blue pattern, and here's the wraparound. That's the repeat again, happens there. And you know, just for the sake of being having a complete version of this, you know, I'm going to do this down here. So here's the group of 3 with the compensated tone there that's shifted up a fret because of that tuning between the G and the B string. There's my my 4 fret shape there in blue, and here's the repeat. That's the wraparound again. And then what happens is, this is a little bit harder to get your head around, is this one. Let me just make sure I am in here. Right, that's brilliant. Right, I can see it. Hopefully on my screen this is all back to front, so I'm just keeping my eyes on the page because otherwise if I start trying to do it back to front, it'll go completely wrong. Here is the group of 3. Now the thing is, I've run out of strings to make this group of 3, but remember this string here is replicated on this other thick E string. So look at that. If I put that on there, then I can continue the group of 3 over there. Now what happens is those are filled in. I've already sorted out my wraparound there, and then I'm left with my 4 fret pattern with the root note always in the same spot in the middle there. I'm just going to fill in this one, this up here that I drew at the 15th and 17th fret. And then I put this on here. And you can see then what happens is all 5 patterns use essentially 2 little patterns. So it's breaking up all these big patterns and making them coherent so they all work with each other. But the thing to notice is we need to know where the root note is. We need to know where all your notes are, so that because if you're doing pentatonics, you want to do lead guitar, you want to solo. So, you know, it's understanding how to resolve phrases and your call and response and all that sort of stuff. So you can see there, without exception, that root note is always in the same spot. This root note is always in the same spot in the blue pattern. So the pink pattern, it's always in the same spot. The blue pattern, it's always in the same spot. If you can play just one of these chunks and know exactly where you are in that, then you will be more confident in how you put your phrases and your solos together. This is an easier way to learn the pentatonic boxes. Like I say, these can be linked up on the G and the B string by using the elevator triangles video that I put up earlier last week, a couple of weeks ago. Guys, I'll turn the camera around so you can see my ugly mug. Let's have a look. Right. Okay, what a way to spend an hour in between lessons when a student doesn't turn up. I hope you've got some use out of that. It's really, really cool. That enables you then to be able to take these little chunks and go, let's have a look. I know my root notes there. I know my flat 7s there. You see, the thing is, you need to know where your root notes are because they tell you where your 9ths and your 7ths are. That's why you need to know where those are. You can hear the phrase is finished. if I take this up, if I go into box 2, you can see, hang on, I'm off camera here. There's my root note. Because I know that's my root note, I know my flat 7 is here. It's going to help you all the way along with learning how to do all this stuff. Guys, if you've enjoyed this, please make sure you like the video. Give us a like. If you've got any questions, anybody got any questions? There's nothing come up in the chat at all there. It would be good if something did come up, but it's okay if it doesn't. You can take that or leave it. It's completely up to you. I think this is a little bit more of an efficient way to get your head around the 5 pentatonic boxes. It's by no means the only way. This is a way that I discovered. But I appreciate you guys who've tuned in. And if you're watching this video, you know, after the fact, don't forget I'm going to upload. I will upload this PDF in the description so you can download it and you can see everything that went on there, and you can refer to this as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe, like, hit the notifications, do all the bump that you're supposed to do. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Take care. See you there.